We're grateful to have Cindy's family with us. Speaking of Revelation and the Numbers 3, I have my 3 favorite sisters-in-law and 3 favorite brothers-in-law. And speaking of number 1, Cindy's mom, so favorite mother-in-law as well. My 3 other wives couldn't be here this morning, so... Okay, so the plan today for your sermon, I really want you to get the point of shocking grace that is in Jesus through Luke 15's image of Jesus' parables to the scribes and Pharisees. So I'm going to have 2 stories, hopefully with shocking twists that I promised, if you got to see the little YouTube short. And number 3, 2 perspectives. So Jesus is going to be comparing his perspective with that of the Pharisees in Luke 15. So I'm not going to be able to do all of Luke 15, and I'm going to do more next week, but I will try to layer this in a way that you get the overall picture, okay? And then number 4, again, the point, I want to reinforce the idea of shocking grace. So that is the point that we're talking about, but start off with 2 stories right after this. Here you have the older brother. So there's a lot of cultural things going on in Luke 15. I'm not going to be able to name them all. What you have is a focus generally in our culture on which something is good, which is the younger brother, and the return of the younger brother because of God's acceptance and grace. That is really good. And that is in Luke 15. That is a highlight of Luke 15. The object of Jesus' parables, though, is the older brother, which the father also goes out to talk to or to be gracious to. So, there's going to be some cultural elements, and perhaps I should name a few of them right now, that many of you are familiar with, but some of you may not be familiar with some of these items here in Luke 15 that are critical to kind of understanding this, what we typically call the parable of the prodigal son, and have this shocking idea of grace. Number 1, the father is approached by the 2 sons. Now, the narrative is not going to tell you all the details, but they understand it, of course. The older brother gets a double portion of the inheritance. What they're doing is telling you, Luke is telling us, that the 2 sons basically tell their father, I wish you were already gone. Give us our land, our property, our inheritance. We're out of here. There's no sign that the father is about to pass away. There's nothing like that. There's just an abrasive, blunt, give me my inheritance, and I'll be done with you. And so the shocking aspect of it is the father, in the ear of the Pharisee and the scribe, the father does it. If you were to do that even today in the Middle East, in some countries, in Africa, in some countries, in places in Indonesia and other parts of the world where there are strict traditional cultural ties to property and wealth, do you know what happens if sons approach the father at any age and shame their father like this? They're killed. Here in this parable, a critical element, number 1, is that the father shockingly gives them what they want. And he allows them to depart and kind of be aloof. And so what you have is the one son, as you see in the blue coat, kind of like a Joseph coat, okay? He's the one that goes into the far country and comes back. And the father does something else. Number 2, which is very critical. Again, I can't name them all. There's several. Number 2, the father does something very shamefully, but it's actually humility, which Jesus is trying to explain. He runs out to the younger son because he sees him from far away. What does that mean? That means that they're in a village type of setting. Remember, there's a fatted calf. How many of you ate a fatted calf this 4th of July weekend? Just a few of us. Okay. So a fatted calf is going to be a lot of food. There's a celebration getting ready. The father sees the son far away, runs out because by now there is the thought and the temptation to harm that one. He is no longer a part of our community. He is no longer a faithful Jewish boy or young man. And the father runs out with his robes. You see, in the Middle East, the fathers don't run, especially in their prestigious robes. They walk and parade themselves as if they're, something else. Honor. The father shockingly runs through the village out to the outer edges of town and receives the son and immediately declares his status. Do not treat him don't stone him. Don't say any insults. I'm bestowing my honor back on him. Give him the ring, give him the sandals, give him the robe. And here you have him come back into the context of the home. Big celebration is happening, and out beyond there is the what? The older brother who hears what's going on. What is this I hear? All of this celebration going on. Once again, the father is the master of ceremonies. Eddie, this should resonate because it seems like you do that so often for family. Father is the master of ceremonies. You're needed in the direction of the celebration, the bestowing of praise, the thanksgiving for everything. Everything is revolving around you, and yet the older brother sits out in the estate complaining. What is this I hear? He tells some of the servants, what is this I hear? Da, da, da. And then you have the father doing something shocking again. 3 shocking things, Lance. 3 shocking things, at least. The father goes out to the older son. The father goes out to the older son when the older son has already shamed the father. And here you have the father approaching the older son, and you have an image that Jesus has just given the Pharisees and scribes of what this is about. I'm coming to you. They're shocked by this because they see Jesus like the older brother. They see the Father. They see Jesus. They can't tell the two between. They're blinded to that. But they see that as an opponent. They see him as an opponent. They're shocked that he is, why are you talking to me? As if I should honor you in some way. Shocked at this. This is God's amazing grace. Okay, I'll leave you with that. So 2 stories with the shocking twist that I promised in the little video. This is Stockton Rush. Some of you, if you have access to Netflix, you may have already seen this documentary. Has anyone seen this documentary yet about Ocean Gate? Gary, yes, very good. Yes, Nancy, good. If you have that and you want to see it, please see it, because it is not what a few years ago, before we moved here actually, I think it was June of 23, we heard of this submersible going down to the Titanic, and then the comms, they're gone, and then they don't know where this submersible is and how they would find it if they're going to find it, and they only have so many days worth of oxygen left. And it was a tragic, sad story. And it still is, but it was a tragic, sad story because you heard of 5 people that are gone forever. And that was just such a tragedy. They were going down to see the Titanic. down to see the Titanic. The shocking thing about the documentary is what Cindy and I discovered as we watched, that Stockton Rush, sadly, very intelligent man, but obviously full of pride and arrogance, and unilaterally decided he was going to do it his way, and perhaps he thought he saw a golden opportunity in history to be the one who would begin regular trips for tourists down to the Titanic. And that he would be the face, he would be the Elon Musk that didn't go to Mars but went down to the depths of the bottom of the sea. He would be the Jeff Bezos, he would be among those, he would be so famous you would never forget his name. And now, as the documentary suggests, you probably won't forget his name, because he ignored warning after warning after warning of a carbon fiber hull that was breaking, and they had microphones that you could hear amplified pops as those resins of those fibers just broke and told you the pressure is too much. And yet he took the chance, the risk to go down there, and he actually made it. But he continued to go in the same hull, in the same ship, and this is why we're talking about this in a negative way today. Arrogance, blinded, unsinkable. A reporter asked him. He says it's virtually unsinkable. And they said, well, that's what they said about the Titanic. And the irony, unsinkable, the Pharisees, the scribes, they have a worldview. They look at Jesus as though he is, you don't know what you're talking about. This man receives sinners and eats with them. In other words, Jesus is inviting all of the wrong people and having fellowship with them. He's teaching them, of course. They're coming to Jesus because he's teaching them about God's work and activity through himself, that he is going to redeem Israel, he's going to redeem the world, he is going to save the world. Heroes. He wanted to be one. So did the Pharisees. The Pharisees wanted to save Israel from people like Jesus. Unsinkable, they thought. This story is a little bit different. It's something that wasn't worldwide news like Ocean Gate and Stockton Rush. This was a story back, I believe, about 2007, 2008, 2009. I think it was when Cindy and I were married. And we had heard, or I had heard just an ESPN broadcast, a little short piece on this unusual thing. And it was two West Coast teams, Central Washington, which had the best pitcher. She was also the best hitter of the conference, I believe. And then you had Western Oregon, which they were competing in their last season game for the postseason. And there was a girl named Sarah Tukulski, I believe. Thomas may know about this. And Sarah Tukulski was up at bat, and her team had already won the preliminary game, and if they win this game, they go to the postseason, but this could be the last game of her career. She's a senior, I believe, or at least this is her last game. She's only went 3 for 34 in her season hitting, and she hits a home run off of the best pitcher in the conference, and things are amazing. And she runs, and she actually is so happy that she misses first base. So she plants and pivots to go back to first base. But when she does, her knee gives out. And she's laying there in pain and agony on the ground. And if you know softball rules, which I don't expect everyone to know softball rules, because I don't know all the softball rules, but you can't have a coach or teammates help you back to first base or help you around the bases. And so she can't. This is the only home run she's ever hit. She's like 5'2". No one ever expected this. She's not a, strong girl like this. So she's just sitting there. And then the opponents, the ones who would easily probably win the game and go to postseason, live their lives, so forth, they came up with the shocking thought that they knew was legal within the game. And they said to the coach, the first base coach, we can take her and let her touch each base. She hit a home run. She deserves a home run. I'm emotional because you get it. Shocking that somebody would do that. They will always be known. They won an ESPY for this years later. They will always be known, not for playing softball, but for thinking outside the traditional box of, well, we want to win this game. If she stays on first base and they get a pinch runner, it's just a 2-run single. She doesn't hit a home run. We got a better chance. It's to our advantage. It works for us. Glad she's hurt. That's not what they thought. They put the game aside. And in a shocking twist of grace, they picked her up. She deserves it. She's worthy of it. Two perspectives Jesus has versus the Pharisees in Luke 15. You have the Pharisees who are like the Stockton Rushes, who see everyone as a barrier to their success, to their inheritance, perhaps, to their golden opportunity within the kingdom of God as leaders and rulers of Israel. And then you have Jesus, who should be like an opponent who seizes advantage, and yet he doesn't. He sees opponents and he sees something that we've never seen before. Amazing grace. And this is how the parables play out. The shepherd and the sheep, the celebration afterwards, the woman and the lost coin, and the celebration afterwards. And guess what? The parable of the father and the 2 sons, and the return of the 1 son, and the celebration afterwards, and the intention for the older son to join in the celebration. But the older son doesn't see it that way. He doesn't see shocking grace. He doesn't see the idea throughout Jesus' ministry that Jesus is not being unfair. He's graciously revealing God's redemptive love to the Pharisees and scribes. He offers a parable instead of an offense. They, however, are blinded by arrogance and view his behavior as shameful and disgraceful. The father is disgraced by his sons. The father runs to protect the younger son. The father leaves the celebration to reason with his older brother, the older brother. And now we have Jesus' perspective, which has always been his perspective. Workers in the vineyard, remember that? The master of the field, the owner of the field, goes out to hire somebody, gives them a day's wage, and then keeps doing that throughout the day. Usually there's day laborers that are sitting at a curb somewhere, sitting at a booth somewhere hoping to get hired so they can bring home food to their family that night. They're hoping for work. And so the master of the field or the owner of the field goes out and picks one, and then he does this even up until the 11th hour. Supposedly we're to understand this is the last, there's only 1 hour left in the day of work, and he gives the worker a full day's wage. And so when the workers came to collect their wage, they said, wait a minute, this is not fair. This is not fair. How could you do this? See, there's a few things with this parable too. The owner in that culture, especially Jesus' time, they don't go out to pick laborers. Somebody else does that. A slave does that. Owner doesn't disgrace himself and go out and pick laborers. But here, Jesus allows himself to be thought of as that, and you see him going out picking laborers, graciously giving people dignity and hope. But the workers don't see it that way. The workers just see it as unfair. I worked harder than all of these all day long. And he's astonished by this. You don't think I should dignify other people? Shocking grace. Matthew 20, the laborers in the vineyard receive shocking grace from the master of the vineyard. And Israel is characterized as God's vineyard. These are not just new ancient images. These are images that Isaiah and the other prophets have used of Israel before, and that's what you have. Here's the other shocking twist that most of us know, but some of us don't, about the prodigal son. Prodigal means wasteful. The prodigal son is not a real person, and he's not just meant to have you reflect upon him. The prodigal son is Israel, the nation. Anytime somebody talks about a son returning home, it's about Israel returning from captivity, from exile. The Exodus. Israel in Egypt is captive, slaves. I'm going to free my son. Exodus chapter 4, verse 23. Include that into the equation of Luke 15, and you have the vineyard parables, the Matthew 20 parables. You have all of these parables that Jesus is likening as himself is coming to Israel and he's redeeming them. And the Pharisees and scribes represent a Stockton Rush kind of point of view where they cannot understand what the Messiah is, what Jesus is doing. They don't think he's the Messiah. And this is what the world thinks of the Jesus you and I worship at large. You and I are not a majority as Christians. We do not have the majority point of view. And the Bible we read was not written from a majority point of view. It was written from a very tiny Israelite faithful minority point of view. Not everybody in Israel believed what their Bibles, what we would call their Bibles, said. We have shocking grace from the Good Shepherd, which I started last week. He's a different kind of shepherd. And the condemnation of Ezekiel 34, Jeremiah, and the other places in our Old Testaments where God talks about those who lead Israel, do not lead them in faith, they corrupt them. Jesus has come. I am the Good Shepherd. And he offers something much different, a different perspective, and it's God's perspective, whereas the bad shepherds are trying to oppose him. And that's the tension that you and I live in every day as Christians. What are we offering? Are we offering God's message of shocking grace? I know that we are, but we need to offer it all the time, more and more. That doesn't mean that we ignore sin and corruption. No, that means we expose it as a brother as Jesus would, even in his parable, as lovingly and as graciously as he went out to the older brother to do. And let people think right face to face what they're encountering. Painfully, sadly. Matthew 20:23, Eddie, what is it? You are so aware of the cumin, the mint, all of these things you tithe to the nth degree, but you're blinded by what? The weightier matters of the law. Love, faith, mercy. One of these sounds like Jesus, the other one sounds like the world that opposes Jesus. Sadly, the Pharisees and scribes' faith was defined by extreme pride, hubris. Not all of them, most of them. And this is the problem, the tension that we live in the world. The good shepherd is God through Jesus, and that's what you and I need to emphasize is the name Jesus and what he taught and what he said and what he believes all the time. So, this has implications. Jesus, therefore, is what? Pharisees understand how blasphemous he's talking. He is the temple. He's the new one. Destroy this body, destroy this temple, 3 days I'll raise it up. But he was speaking of what? Doesn't say the resurrection. It is the resurrection. Doesn't say that. What does it say? The temple of his body. He's the way. He's the life. He's the truth. That means the Pharisees and scribes don't have that. The world does not have that. The Pharisees and scribes in their arrogance are blind and cannot imagine shocking grace. Sadly, Stockton Rush, those who were willing to believe his vision are not with us anymore. That's a sad fact. But it didn't have to be that way. There were a lot of people that warned him kindly, we cannot do this. You're risking more than your own life. What we can imagine and have been able to imagine, and you can see that it inspires, is not the hero, the worldwide hero. It is, ironically, what? A girl from Western Oregon? Or Central Washington? Who picks up the one who can't even go around the bases. And in her we see the attributes of Jesus. I wonder who her parents were. Unsinkable. Jesus is saying, this is Jesus' question to them when he's speaking to the Pharisees and scribes. That's basically what he's saying. You think you're unsinkable. There's a way out. And it's through shocking grace that comes from the Father, through his death and through his resurrection. But they need to listen to him. They need to listen to him. That's what defines our faith. Let Jesus define our faith with his shocking grace every day of our lives. If you have a need this morning, you're more than welcome to come and make it known. Thank you, left side of the room for me, that you were so attentive, and right side of the room that you were so attentive that you were not distracted by my aggressive right-hand posture right here. If you need to be baptized into Jesus, the offer is always there because it is grace that leads you to repentance, Romans chapter 2. Do you not know that the goodness and kindness of God is that which leads you to repentance? If you have that need or any other that you want to make known to us as a family of God, you know that we're willing to talk and pray as God commands us. As Thomas leads us in that song, and we all stand if you want to, please come forward.